In the middle of the night, an old king entered the enemy camp alone. He knelt before Achilles and kissed the hands that had killed his son. The greatest warrior alive could have struck him down. Instead, when Priam whispered, "Remember your father," Achilles began to weep. For one night, a killer and a grieving father shared the same pain. But this is not the story of an invincible warrior. It is the story of a man offered two lives, a long life without glory, or a short life remembered forever. Achilles chose immortality. He thought the price would be his death. He was wrong. Before Troy took his life, pride took his friend, rage took his mercy, and victory took his peace. So how did the greatest warrior in Greece become a prisoner of his own name? And why did he rediscover his humanity only after he had lost everything? Achilles was born between two worlds. His mother, Thetis, was immortal. His father, Peleus, was not. From the moment Achilles entered the world, greatness and death followed him together. When he left for Troy, his father did not warn him about swords or spears. He warned him about himself. Control your proud heart. Stay away from destructive quarrels. Gentleness will earn you greater honor. It was the advice Achilles needed most, and the advice he would soon forget. Because at Troy, the first wound that changed his fate was not made by Hector. It was a wound no armor could stop. Humiliation. For 9 days, Apollo's plague swept through the Greek camp. Soldiers died, funeral fires burned, and Achilles demanded the truth. The prophet Calchas revealed that Agamemnon had insulted a priest of Apollo, and the king must return the priest's daughter. Agamemnon agreed, but he refused to lose his prize without taking another. So, before the entire army, he ordered Achilles to surrender Briseis. To everyone else, it was an exchange. To Achilles, it was a public humiliation. His hand moved toward his sword. Only Athena stopped him from killing the king, but she did not take away his anger. Agamemnon took Briseis, and Achilles withdrew from the war. That evening, he sat alone beside the dark sea, listening to the waves, while his anger quietly began to decide the fate of thousands. Achilles did more than refuse to fight. He called upon his mother, Thetis, and asked her to persuade Zeus to help the Trojans. He wanted the Greeks driven back, until they understood the cost of dishonoring him. And Zeus agreed. Without Achilles, Hector pushed the Greeks toward their ships. Men died. Defenses collapsed. Trojan fires moved closer to the sea. Desperate, Agamemnon offered gold, horses, even the return of Briseis. But Achilles refused everything. Every Greek defeat proved that they needed him. And to Achilles, that felt like justice. But beside him, Patroclus saw something else. He watched wounded soldiers return from battle, one after another, and with every cry from the dying, he moved closer to a decision that would change them both. Patroclus could no longer remain silent. "If you will not fight," he told Achilles, "then let me wear your armor." The Trojans would believe Achilles had returned. That fear alone might save the Greek ships. Achilles finally agreed, but gave his friend one command: drive the Trojans away from the ships, then come back. Do not chase them to the walls of Troy. Patroclus placed the famous armor over his shoulders, gathered the Myrmidons, and prepared for battle. Before he left, Achilles prayed to Zeus, "Give him victory, and bring him safely back to me." Zeus heard the prayer. He granted the victory, but not the return. And beneath a darkening sky, Patroclus rode toward the battlefield, wearing the armor of a legend. and carrying a fate that was never meant to be his. At first, the plan worked. The Trojans saw Achilles' armor and fled. Patroclus saved the ships, drove back Hector's forces, and even killed Sarpedon, the son of Zeus. He had done everything Achilles asked. He should have returned. But victory pulled him forward. Patroclus chased the Trojans to their walls and tried 3 times to break into the city. Each time Apollo forced him back. Then the gods struck him from behind. His helmet fell, his spear shattered, his armor came loose. Euphorbus wounded him first, and Hector delivered the final blow. As Patroclus fell, he warned Hector that Achilles would soon come for him. And while the battle closed around his body, Antilochus began running toward the Greek ships, carrying news that would end Achilles' anger and awaken something far more terrible. Antilochus reached Achilles in tears. "Patroclus is dead," he said, "and Hector is wearing your armor." A black cloud of grief covered Achilles. He poured dust over his head, tore at his hair, and collapsed beside the ships. Antilochus held his hands, afraid he might take his own life. Then Thetis rose from the sea and found her son broken. "I received everything I asked from Zeus," Achilles told her, "but what good is honor now if Patroclus is gone?" He swore to return to battle and kill Hector, but Thetis warned him, "If Hector dies by your hand, your own death will follow soon after." Achilles understood, and still he chose to go. His old armor was gone, so Thetis asked him to wait until dawn. Then she left for the forge of Hephaestus to bring back armor made for a warrior who already knew he would never return home. At dawn, Thetis returned with armor no mortal could have made. On its great shield, Hephaestus had shaped the earth, the sea, the stars, cities at peace and cities at war. When the armor struck the ground, the Myrmidons stepped back in fear. But Achilles looked at it, and his eyes burned brighter. He called the Greeks together and ended his quarrel with Agamemnon. The king returned Briseis and offered every promised gift, but none of it mattered now. Briseis found Patroclus lying dead and wept over the man who had always treated her with kindness. Achilles refused food and fastened the new armor around his body. This was not forgiveness. He had not found peace. He had simply given his grief a target. As the morning light spread across the shore, Achilles walked slowly toward his chariot, and for a moment the entire Greek camp fell silent, listening to the distant sound of battle beyond the plain. The moment Achilles entered the battlefield, the Trojan lines broke. He searched for Hector, but Apollo kept Hector beyond his reach. So Achilles turned his fury on everyone else. Lycaon, a young son of Priam, fell at his knees and begged for mercy. He reminded Achilles that he was not Hector's brother by the same mother, but Achilles no longer cared. "Patroclus died," he told him, "and death is waiting for me too." Then he killed him. Soon the river's commander was crowded with bodies. Angered by the slaughter, the river rose against Achilles and nearly swept him away. Only the fire of Hephaestus forced its waters back. Even the gods had to contain the force of his grief. As the surviving Trojans disappeared behind their walls, one man remained outside the gates. Hector stood alone on the silent plain, listening as the footsteps of Achilles slowly came closer. From the walls, Priam and Hecuba begged Hector to come inside, but he remained before the gates. Then Achilles approached, and Hector ran. 3 times they circled the walls of Troy, while the gods watched from above. At last, Athena appeared beside Hector, disguised as his brother Deiphobus, and convinced him to stand. Hector threw his spear, but it struck Achilles' shield and fell away. He called for another weapon. No one answered. Only then did he understand that the gods had deceived him. Still, Hector drew his sword and charged. Achilles found a small opening in the armor Hector had taken from Patroclus and drove his spear through Hector's neck. Dying, Hector begged him to return his body to Troy. Achilles refused. Then Hector gave one final warning. Paris and Apollo would soon kill Achilles at the Scaean gate. As Hector's life faded, the sound of mourning rose from behind the walls. Achilles had finally won the revenge he wanted, but as he stood over Hector in the settling dust, the pain inside him remained exactly where it had been. Achilles pierced Hector's ankles, tied the body behind his chariot, and dragged it back to the Greek ships. Before the eyes of Hector's parents, his face disappeared beneath the dust. At the camp, Achilles left him lying beside Patroclus. He built a great funeral pyre for his friend. Horses, dogs, and 12 Trojan captives were sacrificed to the dead. But when the flames faded and the funeral games ended, Achilles' grief remained. Every morning he tied Hector behind his chariot and dragged the body 3 times around Patroclus' tomb. The gods protected Hector's body from destruction, but they could not persuade Achilles to let go. He had killed his enemy, yet he continued fighting him long after death. At last, Zeus ordered Hector's body to be returned. And under the cover of night, an old king left Troy with a wagon of ransom and only one elderly herald beside him, moving quietly through the darkness toward the man who had killed his son. Priam entered the hut unseen. Then the old king knelt before Achilles and kissed the hands that had killed so many of his sons. "I have endured what no father should endure," he said. "I have kissed the hands of the man who killed my child." Then he looked into Achilles' eyes. "Remember your father." Achilles did. He imagined Peleus growing old without him, waiting for a son who would never return. And suddenly, the enemy before him was no longer the king of Troy. He was simply a grieving father. Priam wept for Hector. Achilles wept for Peleus and for Patroclus. Then Achilles lifted the old man from the ground. He ordered Hector's body washed, covered, and placed upon the wagon. He even promised to pause the war so Troy could mourn and bury its prince. At dawn, Priam carried his son home, and as the wagon moved slowly toward Troy, Achilles stood outside his hut and watched in silence, while the fading sound of its wheels carried away the last of his rage. The Iliad ends with the burial of Hector, but the story of Achilles continued. In the ancient epic tradition that followed, Achilles returned to battle, killed the warrior Memnon, and again drove the Trojans toward their city. There, just as Hector had warned, Paris and Apollo brought him down. The greatest warrior in Greece died far from home. Achilles received the glory he had chosen. His name survived kings, cities, and even the civilization that first told his story. But Homer left us with one final irony. Years later, when Odysseus met Achilles among the dead, he called him the ruler of all those in the underworld. Achilles answered, "Do not comfort me about death. I would rather serve a poor man among the living than rule over all the dead." In life, Achilles chose to be remembered instead of growing old. Only in death did he understand that glory and life were never equal. Perhaps his deepest weakness was not his heel. It was the belief that being remembered could replace being alive. Glory preserved his name, but it could not return Patroclus, comfort his father, or give him the future he surrendered. So if the world remembered your name forever, but you lost everyone who made that name worth carrying, would you still call it victory? The war continued. The waves kept moving against the shores of Troy, and long after Achilles was gone, his name remained, along with the question he could no longer answer.